So this is my friend Linnea. She is a very close friend of mine. She's very interested in the Asian culture. She has almost like I would say, she fancies Asian Americans. So one of her questions was, "What's assimilation, or forced assimilation?" As I mentioned in my website. Uh, so forced assimilation is when someone comes from a different country, they are forced or indirectly forced to adapt the culture and almost abandon their own. So many people will come here. Of course, they'll still speak Chinese or Korean or Vietnamese, but they still have the problem where they have to be able to speak proper English. Educate themselves, dress like everyone else. If you kind of like dress yourself like you would back home, you would probably just get dirty looks. It's kind of like if you go to school with your PJs, people are gonna look at you funny.
Right.
Right. So you wanna be able to just adapt and look like everyone does. Obviously, if you're an Asian American, depending on where you're from, you're gonna have different features from people who are born here in America. Uh, Skin tone, eye shapes, such and such. And so with assimilation, in school they have to start speaking English. They have to know slang. Really just connect with everyone else and stuff. And then your next question was discrimination amongst Asian American communities.
Right.
And so this topic is kind of uh, common with like other minorities. African Americans will sometimes not like each other because they're a different skin tone, or Hispanics just because you're from a different Latin American country, you're seen as different from everyone else. Like many Latin Americans, they think of themselves as higher when compared to like other countries. You'll have like a Mexican thinks that they're better than Ecuadorians or better than Colombians, and so this is kind of like the same. Where some Asian Americans will favor other countries, or they'll look down upon other lesser countries. Like if a Chinese guy met a Vietnamese guy, he'd probably talk bad about the Vietnamese because Vietnam and Cambodia and like the Philippines are kind of lower class countries, or third world countries almost. Poverty and all that. I'm not saying that China doesn't have poverty, but they are wealthier. They're not considered a third world country. They have a great economy, of course. And so, in a sense, this actually kind of connects to how people discriminate Asian Americans because of where they're from. If you hear Asians, you probably think, Chinese, Japanese, and Korean.
Right.
But it's not the case. There's more than just that. Some parts of Russia are part of that. Some parts of India are part of the Asian continent. So, even though the communities discriminate against each other, they also get discriminated by other people. And also, in regards to business, they get pushed into just having small businesses rather than just like if a Caucasian male were to try and develop a company from scratch, it would be a lot easier for him than for an Asian American. If you go to a lower income neighborhood, you're gonna see a lot of like dollar stores or like Chinese restaurants owned by Asian Americans. I'm not saying that that's all they own, of course.
You do get some Asian American CEOs and things like that, but I see what you're talking about.
Yeah, definitely. And that kind of goes into the whole talk about how Asians are seen as model minorities because so many of them will actually be very successful, especially like second, third generation children will adapt to the country and the environment much better. However, they of course leave behind their culture and their beliefs and stuff. But because of that, they're able to get into better schools, get citizenship much faster than any other minority, and as well, they get hired into higher position jobs compared to like other minorities like Latinos and African Americans. Like in Samsung, of course, it's a Asian company, but they're seeing that these Asians are they're building great companies, and of course, China being such a great economy, you think, well, Asians are really good, or they're very smart and such.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Definitely a stereotype.
Yeah, that's true. That's one of the biggest stereotypes that Asians are pretty smart. And then your last question was the women's role with the community. I know it's kind of like sketchy the way I mentioned it in the website about how they're it's kind of like sexist, which is kind of true at one point. How we discussed it before that it's not like they're making women to be in the kitchen, but they have the preset role of following that. In the website, I actually had an article where this woman was like torn apart between following her her Asian roots of just being a stay-at-home wife, or actually taking on like very high-paying job.
Right.
So a lot of women will face that, especially if like they're second generation, because they have this ability to just do whatever they can, or whatever they wish to. Women here have the possibility of doing that. Not in other countries where women are kind of subjected as second-class citizens. And in America, even though we still kind of have that, where women will how they get paid much less than men do with jobs, but women, Asian women, do have to sometimes choose, but often enough they end up being housewives. Um, and so back to the stereotypes, um, so many people are misled about Asian Americans being really smart. I mean, some of them are, but then again, you do have very smart of everything. You can have very smart African Americans, very smart Latinos, but usually it turns out that most Asian Americans are just really hardworking. They really just have to, they like I met this one guy. I discussed this in class. I had this one friend in high school where his English was really bad, but for some reason he had like the highest grade of the entire class, and it was mainly due because he actually translated everything into his native language. I forgot where he was from, but he translated everything, and so that's how he was able to do all the homework, because he would stay up late and just do everything.
Wow.
It was impressive, but I'm surprised he even took the time to do all of that. So then we have some of the things we learned from in class were ethnic conflict and matrix of domination. Ethnic conflict is, basically what it sounds like. You have conflicts with other minorities. However, Asian Americans are kind of a different case. Of course, Latinos and African Americans can't have issues amongst each other, but Asians, because they are so isolated, they tend to isolate themselves. As we talked before, Asians kind of gather around with each other.
Oh yeah.
I don't want to sound racist or anything, but if you
It's true.
It's true. At the school, all the Asians. I mean, they do make friends with other people, but they're still
They like to congregate.
exactly. So like ethnic conflict, because they're so isolated, they have their own like communities. They have very little to none conflict with other communities. If you go to like LA, you have a lot of gangs that you have like Hispanic, Black, and Asian American gangs. So that would be a form of conflict. An Asian gang versus African American gang. But it's usually that. Well, one of the conflicts I noticed was um, Asian Americans versus like Caucasians or Americans. Or not Americans, but whites. Um, they tend to because most of the America is run by whites. You know, there's still conflict amongst the Asians. Like in the California when there was a gold rush, Asians were treated pretty bad. They were basically forced to do labor that essentially killed them most of the time. And so, like, one of the conflicts was schooling, where these kids were being forced to really leave their roots, like I said, with like the whole assimilation thing. And so, like, the board, the school system is not run by minorities mainly. Of course, it's we have like board of ed and all that, but it's all usually run by whites. And so because of that, they don't promote them having their roots. They say, "Oh, you have to speak English. You have to do this and that." And so, a way I figured would be a way of figuring this thing out was to just have, how they have African American month. Have like some time dedicated to just uh, tell Asian Americans, celebrate your roots. Have some kind of project, some kind of activities where they feel like it's okay to be Asian American, to be Vietnamese, to bring out the Chinese in them, that stuff. Really to be able to explore their not conflict, sorry, their roots. Um, and of course, it's going to be money, but it costs money for the school, but it can be done. Any questions so far?
Would this would usually be in areas where there are lots of Asian Americans. Like I can think there are lots on the West Coast, there are lots on the East Coast. There aren't really that many in the middle of the United States. So then if they funded for things like that in the school system, they would probably just do it in those states, or would they try and make this like a nationwide thing?
We would try and do it. Well, if it went through, we would try and do it, nationally. It's not just for Asian Americans, also for Latinos and African Americans. Well, I mean,
and their minorities are everywhere in the United
exactly.
States, so.
Well, with Asian Americans, they do. It would be great if they could do it nationally. Just because you don't have just one Asian. Just because you have only one Asian in one school doesn't mean you shouldn't do it.
Right.
But of course, that would probably be a waste of money. But still.
After all, Black History Month is a national month.
Exactly. Right? They have that in every school, and I'm pretty sure they'd be able to do something for other minorities. Although I understand how hard it would be if like a school is struggling with funding. But I think it would be a good thing even if they are struggling, it would be like a nice how do you say, investment, because you kind of promote a better atmosphere. Where people are not discriminated. There's of course racial terms for Asians and stuff, so you kind of want to promote just like that even though it's just everyone thinks of Chinese, Koreans, and Japanese, that there's more than just that. Especially like with people who just recently came and they're struggling with English, they're always going to be targeted by bullies or some form of discrimination. So it's better if they feel like they're at home, where they can just say, I am Vietnamese, I am Korean.
Free to talk about their background.
Exactly. And so, Matrix of Domination. This is basically saying how like all the minorities are their oppression in, like, let's say, socioeconomic balance or in some form of social status, like kind of like it's saying that they are being dominated by whites, and that it's all connected. In a sense, it kind of all is. Like in the media, Asian Americans are portrayed with very negative stereotypes. As we saw in the movie Friday.
Right.
The Asian pops up and all you hear is "bong," and
yes.
You just, of course, there's a stereotype that they own convenience stores and that they just like, they're Chinese. It's very stereotypical, and so like the media will help in portraying, that this minority is just like lesser or for some reason just very different, and it's kind of like trying to justify why people would be racist against them. So like it's and then it goes with business as well, where Asians are just kind of forced to just owning small businesses. There's like little to none wiggle room to really expand. And so like they're being kept down from really trying to make a change. And with going with domination, there's also the thing that they don't want to do it. Like whoever when they're being oppressed, people are trying they're trying to make it so they're not oppressed too much. Because if someone is pushed far enough, they're gonna push back. So they're trying push them to a point where they'll be okay with what's going on. We saw a video of this African lady who was talking about trying to create cleaner neighborhoods for African Americans, and she started talking about how some investors or some people would label their neighborhoods as not worth investing. So in a sense, that could also apply to Asians, where they could, if they live in like poor neighborhoods, they're not going to be able to find better uh, investments, and then it's up just like create bad environment for kids to grow up in. Of course, you're going to have a lot of illnesses if they live in poor neighborhoods or poorly facilitated housing. Some obstacles that the Asian Americans face is just, I think, primarily would be the stereotyping. They say, oh, Asians are smart, oh, this and that. I'm pretty sure people would be offended by that. If you go, especially people say, oh, my iPhone's broken. Do you think you can fix it?
Put in a bag of rice, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I know they have some memes that are pretty funny, but at the same time, they just like the one with the strict Asian dad, and like, why not hepatitis A instead of hepatitis B? And that even itself is given like a stereotype that the what is it? That the parents are very strict, or that they're very rude or harmful to kids, but in reality, they just try and push them to have a better education and just really have a better life for themselves. And going off the stereotyping, also the whole model minority. I know how that could face challenge for Asian Americans, especially children. I read an article where it talks about how you should handle Asian Americans as a teacher, and they say they're very trouble-free. You don't have to pay attention to them. You don't really have to worry about them causing trouble. And I think that's something that really shouldn't be happening, because if someone thinks that the kid doesn't need attention, then obviously the kid's just going to think, well, they're not going to help me and stuff. And again, that keeps going to the assimilation. They have to just force themselves to really change. And at the same time, if that happens, they won't be able to get the help they actually need, if they actually need some. I know that, like I said, there's many successful Asian Americans, but at the same time, the minority thing can be a challenge. And lastly, I'm going to ask you this. Do you think that racism can be eliminated?
Completely no. But we've come a long way since the country was first started. The original people here were Native Americans, right? And then white people came, and white people kind of took over. And so they became the predominant race, and then other races started coming in, and that was the beginning of racism. Also, slavery incorporated some racism there. And ever since we had movements, like civil rights movement and things like that, people have become more tolerant and open-minded towards races. But there are definitely still people out there who think their race is superior. It could be any race thinking their race is superior. That's racism. And so I don't think that can be eliminated completely. There are like 300 million people in this country, so but it's definitely gotten a lot better.
Yeah, that's true. I definitely would agree with you on that. That racism has changed over time. I think what would be the answer is just that, like you said, maybe it could be reduced, but it can't be eliminated.
And people can be educated as well.
That too.
That could help a lot.
A lot of people are just so misguided about all kinds of stereotypes, whether it's for African Americans or Asians or Latinos. And so it's like something that really could use a bit more help, but at the same time, it's in our instincts to kind of question things that are different from us. As just primitive selves.
Exactly.
We try and avoid things that could harm us or whatever. If we see something that's different, we try to stay away from it.
Fear of the unknown.
And of course, you can't get rid of that, not so easily. But you can, like you said, education. Educate each other about each other's races and celebrate them. It's something that would really, really take a lot of time to get over. But even then, a lot of people are just going to find things to be corny about. Kind of make some racist joke.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, some will be funny. I will admit, that they are funny, as I mentioned in class. But it's something that if you are able to laugh alone about it, you're not gonna think of it as such a bad thing. You know, you're just creating connections. You know.
Yeah.
You know, if you have two people different races, you know, they're sharing like jokes and all that. They're, you know, building a bond with each other. And of course, you know, you can be friends, even if you are different races. Um, you know,
Example right here.
exactly. There we go. And so, overall, it's just that something I really should need more attention. But, you know, it's it'll get better, hopefully.
Yep.
Anything else you'd like to add?
I think we're good. We
Mhm.
covered a lot.
All right, perfect.